My daughter took me out for lunch, but gave the bill to me. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. You know how they say that parenting is the most thankless job in the world? Well, I used to roll my eyes at that phrase. I thought those people were just bitter, probably bad parents who raised spoiled kids. I was different. I was raising a grateful daughter who would appreciate all my sacrifices. I was wrong about so many things. Let me start from the beginning, because this story didn't happen overnight. It took 28 years to unfold, 28 years of me being the best father I could be, and one lunch to realize I had been a fool. Emma was born on a rainy Tuesday in March, and from the moment I held her tiny, wrinkled body, I knew my life had changed forever. She was perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and the most beautiful cry I'd ever heard. My wife Sarah used to joke that I loved Emma more than I loved her, and honestly, she might have been right. There's something different about the love you have for your child. It's primal, unconditional, and completely overwhelming. Those early years were a blur of sleepless nights and endless worry. I remember the smell of formula and baby powder that seemed to cling to every surface in our house. Sarah and I would take turns walking the floors with Emma when she was colicky, and I'd whisper stories to her about all the adventures we'd have when she was older. I'd tell her about the trips we'd take, the books we'd read together, the way I'd teach her to ride a bike and drive a car and choose the right college. When Emma started talking, her first word wasn't mama or dada, it was more. That should have been my first clue, but at the time, I thought it was adorable. She was curious, ambitious, always wanting more than what was in front of her. I was proud of her drive. I worked 2 jobs through most of Emma's childhood. During the day, I was an accountant at a mid-sized firm, and 3 nights a week I drove for a taxi company. Sarah worked part-time at a dentist's office, but we both knew that if we wanted Emma to have the best opportunities, we needed to sacrifice. Other kids in the neighborhood got hand-me-down clothes and generic cereal, but not our Emma. She had the name-brand sneakers, the latest backpack, in a bedroom that looked like something out of a catalog. I remember the morning ritual we had when she was in elementary school. I'd wake up at 5:30 to make her breakfast. Not just cereal, but real breakfast. Pancakes shaped like hearts, scrambled eggs with cheese, fresh orange juice. The kitchen would smell like maple syrup and coffee, and Emma would come downstairs in whatever outfit she'd laid out the night before. Always perfectly coordinated. She had this way of making even her school uniform look fashionable. "Morning, princess," I'd say, and she'd give me this sleepy smile that made every early morning worth it. "Thanks, Daddy," she'd say, and those 2 words could power me through the longest day. She was smart too, scary smart. Her report cards were always perfect, and parent-teacher conferences were just opportunities for me to sit there and beam with pride while her teachers gushed about how exceptional she was. Mrs. Henderson in 4th grade told us Emma was gifted beyond her years, and I walked out of that school feeling like I was floating on air. When Emma turned 10, she decided she wanted to learn piano. The lessons were expensive, $60 a week, but I didn't hesitate. I found a teacher, Mrs. Petrov, this elegant Russian woman who had studied at Juilliard. Emma's fingers were long and graceful, perfect for piano, and Mrs. Petrov said she had natural talent. I bought Emma a beautiful upright piano, spent almost $3,000 I didn't really have, and had it delivered on a Saturday morning. The look on Emma's face when she saw it was worth every penny. She practiced religiously, and our house was always filled with music. Chopin, Bach, Mozart. She mastered them all. I'd sit in my armchair after dinner, newspaper in my lap, listening to her play and thinking that this was what happiness sounded like. Sarah would be in the kitchen doing dishes, humming along to whatever piece Emma was working on, and everything felt perfect. Emma's first recital was when she was 12. She wore this white dress with tiny pearls sewn around the collar, and her hair was pulled back in an elegant bun. She played Claire de Lune flawlessly, And when she finished, the entire audience stood and applauded. I had tears streaming down my face, and I didn't care who saw. That was my daughter up there. My brilliant, talented daughter, and everyone knew it. High school brought new expenses. Emma wanted to take AP classes, which meant tutoring fees. She wanted to join the debate team, which required travel money for competitions. She wanted to apply to elite colleges, which meant SAT prep courses that cost more than my monthly car payment. I said yes to everything. How could I say no? This was Emma's future we were talking about. I remember the conversation we had junior year about college applications. Emma had her heart set on Columbia, her second choice was Northwestern, and her safety school was a state university that still cost more than I made in 6 months. "Dad, I know it's expensive," she said, sitting across from me at our kitchen table, surrounded by college brochures and application forms. "But this is my chance to really make something of myself." "Don't worry about the money, sweetheart," I told her. "Your education is an investment in your future. We'll figure it out." And we did figure it out, though it meant taking out a second mortgage on the house and emptying our retirement savings. When the acceptance letter from Columbia arrived, Emma screamed so loud the neighbors came over to check if everything was okay. She threw her arms around me and said, "I couldn't have done this without you, Dad. I'm going to make you so proud." I already was proud. I was so proud I thought my chest might burst. College was a financial nightmare, but I never let Emma know that. Tuition, room and board, textbooks, spending money, it all added up to numbers that made my head spin. I picked up extra shifts at the taxi company, worked weekends, and Sarah took on more hours at the dental office. We ate a lot of pasta and rice those years, but Emma never went without anything she needed. She called home every Sunday, usually while she was walking between classes or sitting in her dorm room. She'd tell me about her professors, her friends, the parties she went to. She sounded so confident, so worldly. My little girl was becoming a woman, and she was thriving in ways I had only dreamed about when I was her age. "Dad, you should see this place," she told me during one call, her sophomore year. "The library has 7 floors, and there's this reading room with these huge windows that look out over the campus. Sometimes I just sit there and think about how lucky I am to be here." "You earned it, Emma," I said. "You worked hard, and you deserve everything good that's coming your way." When she graduated, I cried harder than I had at her piano recital. There she was, walking across that stage in her cap and gown, diploma in hand, ready to conquer the world. The student loan debt was crushing, over $200,000 between her undergraduate degree and the master's program she wanted to do. But I signed every paper that needed signing. This was Emma's future. Nothing was too much. Her first job out of college was at a marketing firm in Manhattan. The salary was good but not great, certainly not enough to pay for a decent apartment in the city plus her student loan payments. So I helped with rent. Just for the first year, I told myself, just until she got established. 1 year turned into 2, then 3. Emma was climbing the corporate ladder, getting promotions and raises. But the cost of living in New York was astronomical. She needed business clothes, she said. She needed to take clients out for drinks. She needed to maintain a certain image to be taken seriously. I understood. I had been young and ambitious once too. "Dad, I hate asking for money," she'd say during our monthly phone calls. "But rent just went up again, and I'm still paying off those credit cards from when I was unemployed for 6 weeks between jobs." I never said no. How could I? This was temporary. Emma was smart and driven, and she'd figure it out eventually. In the meantime, I'd tighten my belt a little more, skip the occasional dinner out with Sarah, and drive my car for another year instead of trading it in. Sarah and I started fighting more during those years. Not big, dramatic fights, but the kind of quiet, persistent arguments that eat away at a marriage like water on stone. "She's 26 years old, Tom," Sarah would say while we were getting ready for bed. "When are we going to stop supporting her?" "She's building her career," I'd reply. "This is normal. Our parents helped us when we were starting out." "No, they didn't," Sarah would snap. "My parents couldn't afford to help me, and your parents told you to figure it out on your own. We lived in that terrible studio apartment for 3 years, and we made it work." Times are different now, I'd argue. Everything costs more. It's harder for young people to get established. Emma makes more money than I do, Sarah would point out. If she can't live on her salary, maybe she needs to adjust her lifestyle instead of us adjusting ours. But I couldn't bear the thought of Emma struggling. I remembered what it felt like to be young and overwhelmed, and I had the power to make things easier for her. Wasn't that what parents were supposed to do? Emma's 30th birthday was last year, and I flew to New York to celebrate with her. She had moved into a beautiful one-bedroom apartment in Soho with exposed brick walls and hardwood floors that gleamed in the afternoon sunlight. The rent was more than I made in a month, but she seemed so happy there. We went to dinner at this trendy restaurant where the menu didn't have prices and the waiters wore black turtlenecks like they were artists instead of servers. Emma ordered wine that cost $50 a glass and talked about her job, her friends, her plans to travel to Europe in the spring. "You've done such a good job with your life, princess," I told her over dessert, which was some complicated thing involving chocolate and gold leaf. "I'm so proud of the woman you've become." "Thanks, Dad," she said, but she was looking at her phone while she said it. "Oh, Jessica just texted. We're going to meet up at this new club later. You don't mind if we cut dinner short, do you?" I didn't mind. I never minded. I went back to my hotel and called Sarah to tell her about the wonderful evening I'd had with our daughter. But something was shifting inside me, something I didn't want to acknowledge. There were moments when I'd catch myself wondering if Emma ever thought about anyone besides herself. When she called, it was always to ask for something. Money, advice about work problems, help with some crisis or another. When was the last time she had asked how I was doing? When was the last time she had remembered Sarah's birthday without being reminded? I pushed those thoughts away. Emma was busy, I told myself. She was focused on her career, which was exactly what I had taught her to do. She was living the life I had worked so hard to give her. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March, exactly 28 years after Emma was born, though I didn't realize the significance of that timing until later. I was at work, reviewing quarterly reports, when my phone rang. "Dad?" Emma's voice sounded different somehow, softer, more vulnerable than I had heard it in years. "Emma, sweetheart, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," she said quickly. "Actually, something's right for once. I just got a promotion, senior account manager. It comes with a significant raise." "Emma, that's wonderful." I felt that familiar surge of pride and joy. "I knew all your hard work would pay off." "I want to celebrate," she said. "With you. Are you free this Saturday? I thought maybe I could take you out to lunch. There's this new place I've been wanting to try, and I want to spend some time with my dad." I almost dropped the phone. When was the last time Emma had initiated plans with me? When was the last time she had wanted to spend time with me just because, not because she needed something? "Of course," I said, trying to keep the emotion out of my voice, and I love that. "Great. It's called the Gilded Rose. It's in the Upper East Side. 1 o'clock Saturday? I'll be there." After I hung up, I sat in my office chair staring at the quarterly reports without seeing them. Emma wanted to take me out to lunch. Emma wanted to celebrate with me. Maybe all those years of support and sacrifice were finally paying off in a different way. Maybe my daughter was finally ready to show me the same kind of love and care I had always shown her. I spent the rest of the week in a state of happy anticipation. I told Sarah about the lunch, and even she seemed pleased. "Maybe she's finally growing up," Sarah said. "Maybe she's starting to appreciate everything you've done for her." I bought a new shirt for the occasion, a soft blue cotton that Emma had complimented once when we video chatted. I got a haircut even though I had just had one 2 weeks before. I wanted to look good for my daughter, wanted to be the kind of father she could be proud to be seen with. Saturday morning, I took the train into the city. I love that train ride, especially in spring when you can see the trees starting to bloom along the tracks. I sat by the window and watched the familiar landscape roll by, thinking about Emma as a little girl, how she used to press her face against car windows and narrate everything she saw. "Look, Daddy, a red barn. Look, Daddy, horses." She had been so curious about the world, so excited by everything. The Gilded Rose turned out to be one of those restaurants where the hostess looks at you like you're tracking mud on her carpet, even when you're wearing your best clothes. The interior was all dark wood and crystal chandeliers, the kind of place where you whisper, even when you're not in a library. I gave my name and was led to a table by the window, where I sat and waited for Emma. She arrived 15 minutes late, which was typical. Emma had never been on time for anything in her life, not even her own birth. She was wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and her hair was styled in one of those intentionally messy updos that take an hour to achieve. She looked beautiful, sophisticated, like she belonged in this rarefied world of crystal and whispered conversations. "Dad!" She leaned down to kiss my cheek, and I caught a whiff of her perfume, something expensive and floral. "Sorry I'm late. Work has been absolutely insane." "Don't worry about it, sweetheart. I'm just happy to see you." She sat across from me and immediately started talking about her new position, the clients she'd be managing, the office politics she'd have to navigate. I listened, nodding and asking questions at the appropriate moments. But mostly I was just drinking in the sight of her. My daughter, successful and confident, wanting to share her triumph with me. The menu arrived and I tried not to flinch at the prices. Appetizers started at $22. Entrees ranged from $38 to $65. The wine list looked like it had been designed to fund a small country's national debt. But this was Emma's celebration, and she had invited me. Surely she understood what kind of place she had chosen. "The lobster risotto is supposed to be incredible," Emma said, not even glancing at the prices. "And Jessica told me their wine selection is amazing. Should we get a bottle of something nice?" "Whatever you want, princess," I said. "This is your day." We ordered appetizers, entrees, and a bottle of wine that cost more than I used to spend on groceries in a month. But Emma seemed so happy, so relaxed in a way I hadn't seen her in years. She asked about Sarah, about my job, about our neighbors. She laughed at my stories and seemed genuinely interested in my answers. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was talking to my daughter, not just someone who happened to share my DNA. The food was extraordinary, I had to admit. My sea bass was perfectly cooked, flaky and delicate, served with vegetables I couldn't identify, but that tasted like they had been kissed by angels. Emma's lobster risotto was creamy and rich, and she kept offering me bites, just like she used to do when she was little, and would share her ice cream. We talked about everything and nothing. Emma told me about a book she was reading, a trip she was planning, a new friend she had made at work. I told her about the garden Sarah and I were planning for the backyard, about a documentary I had watched about jazz music, about the retirement plans I was slowly putting back together. "You know, Dad," Emma said over dessert, "I don't think I've ever really thanked you properly for everything you've done for me." My heart stopped. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for without even knowing I was waiting for it. "You don't need to thank me," I started to say, but she held up her hand. "No, I do. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, especially since I got this promotion. None of this would have been possible without you. The piano lessons, the college tuition, all the help with rent when I was getting started. I know it wasn't easy for you and Mom." I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. "Emma, you were worth every sacrifice. Seeing you succeed, seeing you happy, that's all I ever wanted." "I know," she said softly. "And I want you to know that I don't take it for granted. I really don't." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. This was what it had all been for. This moment, this connection, this recognition that the love I had poured into my daughter had not been wasted. The waiter appeared at our table with the check, placed it discreetly between us, and disappeared again. Emma glanced at it, then looked back at me with that same soft smile. And then she did something that changed everything. She pushed the check toward me, not dramatically, not with any fanfare, just a casual slide across the table, as natural as breathing. "Thanks for lunch, Dad," she said, already reaching for her purse to check her phone. This was really nice. I stared at the check. $237.43. More than I spent on food in 2 weeks, for a lunch that my daughter had invited me to, at a restaurant she had chosen, to celebrate her promotion. My daughter who made more money than I did. My daughter who had just finished telling me how grateful she was for all my sacrifices. My daughter who had pushed this check toward me like it was the most natural thing in the world. Emma, I said slowly, my voice sounding strange even to myself. You invited me to lunch. I know. Wasn't it fun? She was looking at her phone now, scrolling through messages. We should do this more often. But you invited me. She looked up, and there was genuine confusion in her eyes. Yeah, so? When someone invites someone else to lunch, typically the person who does the inviting pays for the meal. Emma's expression shifted, and for a moment, I saw a flash of something I didn't recognize. Irritation? Disbelief? Dad, come on, she said, her voice taking on a tone I had heard her use with waiters and taxi drivers. You know I'm still getting established. This promotion is great, but I won't see the raise for another month. And you? I mean, you have a steady job and everything. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, for maybe the first time in years. Her manicured nails, her expensive dress, her designer handbag that I knew cost more than most people's rent. I thought about the apartment she lived in, the trips she took, the lifestyle she maintained. I thought about the money I had been sending her every month, the expenses I had covered, the sacrifices I had made. Emma, I said carefully, I've been helping you with your rent for 8 years. I know, and I appreciate it. She was getting impatient now, checking her watch. Look, I told Jessica I'd meet her at 3, and I still need to stop home and change. You make $80,000 a year. Dad, you have no idea how expensive it is to live in this city. Between taxes and rent and everything else. I make $62,000 a year, Emma, before taxes. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire. Emma stared at me, and I watched as various emotions played across her face. Surprise, calculation, and then something that looked almost like anger. Well, I didn't know you wanted me to pay, she said finally, her voice cold in a way I had never heard before. If money is such a big deal, maybe you shouldn't have suggested such an expensive place. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, not yet, but crack, like ice on a pond in early spring. I didn't suggest this place, Emma. You did. Fine, whatever, I'll pay half. She was reaching for her wallet now, making a show of it. I just thought it would be nice to spend time with you without everything being about money. But it was about money. It had always been about money. My money flowing toward her like water toward the ocean, steady and relentless and never questioned. I had been an ATM for so long that Emma had forgotten I was a person. I looked at the check again, $237.43. I had spent more than that on Emma's piano lessons in a single month when she was 12. I had spent more than that on her textbooks for a single semester. I had spent more than that on her graduation dress, her professional wardrobe, her security deposit, her car insurance, her dental work, her everything. But sitting there in that restaurant, watching my daughter reluctantly count out bills like she was doing me a favor, I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. Emma didn't see me as her father. She saw me as her sponsor. Keep your money, I said quietly, putting my credit card on top of the check. Dad, don't be like this, Emma said, but she was already putting her wallet away. You're making this weird. I wasn't making anything weird. I was finally seeing clearly for the first time in 28 years. The waiter processed my card, and I left a tip that was probably too generous, but I was operating on autopilot now. Emma kissed my cheek goodbye and hurried off to meet Jessica, her heels clicking against the marble floor of the restaurant. I sat alone at the table for a few minutes, watching the other diners, wondering if any of them were fathers who had just realized they had raised strangers. The train ride home was the longest hour of my life. I kept replaying the lunch, trying to pinpoint the exact moment when my joy had transformed into something else. Was it when she pushed the check toward me? Or had it been earlier, when she was talking about her new promotion, and I realized she hadn't asked about my work, my health, my happiness? Maybe it had been building for years, this slow recognition that our relationship was entirely transactional. Sarah was in the kitchen when I got home, making dinner. The smell of garlic and onions filled the air, and for a moment, everything felt normal. How was lunch with Emma? She asked without turning around. I sat down at our kitchen table, the same table where Emma had done her homework, where we had celebrated her birthdays, where she had told me about getting into Colombia. The wood was scarred from years of use, marked with ring stains from coffee mugs and scratches from Emma's art projects. She stuck me with the bill, I said. Sarah turned around, a wooden spoon in her hand. What? She invited me to lunch to celebrate her promotion. We went to this expensive restaurant, had a lovely meal, and when the check came, she pushed it toward me like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. Then she set down the spoon and sat across from me. How much was it? $237. Jesus, Tom. She makes more money than I do, I continued, needing to say it out loud. She has for 3 years now, and I'm still sending her money every month, still covering her expenses, still playing the role of the indulgent father who can't say no. What did you tell her? Nothing. I paid the bill, like always. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were warm from cooking, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time Emma had touched me with any kind of genuine affection. Even her goodbye kiss had felt perfunctory, something she did because it was expected. You know what I kept thinking about on the train ride home? I said. That day when she was 7 and she wanted to buy you a Mother's Day present. She had saved up $3 from her allowance, and we went to the drugstore to find something she could afford. She spent 20 minutes looking at everything, trying to find the perfect gift. Finally, she chose this little bottle of hand lotion because she said your hands were always cold and maybe it would help. She was so excited to give it to you. Sarah smiled. I still have that bottle. I never used it because I wanted to keep it. When did that little girl disappear? When did she stop thinking about anyone but herself? I don't know, Sarah said softly. Maybe when we stopped requiring her to. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about all the ways I had enabled Emma's selfishness, all the times I had said yes when I should have said no. I had wanted to be the kind of father who provided, who sacrificed, who put his child's needs before his own. But somewhere along the way, I had stopped teaching Emma that other people had needs too. I thought about my own father, who had died when I was 25. He had been a man of few words and even fewer dollars, but he had taught me something Emma had never learned, that love is not a one-way street. When I had graduated from college, he didn't give me money or help me find an apartment. He shook my hand, told me he was proud of me, and said, "Now it's your turn to take care of yourself." I had resented him for that at the time. I had wanted more support, more help, more of everything. But now I understood what he had been trying to teach me. Independence isn't something you can give someone. It's something they have to take for themselves. The next morning, I made a decision. I called my bank and stopped the automatic transfer I had been making to Emma's account every month. $800 that would stay in my checking account for the first time in 8 years. It felt strange, like walking with one less piece of clothing than usual. Then I sat down at my computer and wrote Emma an email. "Dear Emma," I began, and then stared at the cursor blinking on the screen for 10 minutes before I knew what to say. "I've been thinking about our lunch yesterday, and I realize I need to make some changes. I'm proud of the successful woman you've become, but I think it's time for you to be fully independent. I will no longer be contributing to your rent or other expenses. I know you're capable of managing your own finances, and it's time for me to step back and let you do that. This isn't punishment, and it's not because I love you any less. It's because I love you enough to stop enabling behaviors that aren't serving either of us well. I hope you can understand. Love, Dad." I read it 3 times before I sent it, my finger hovering over the send button for a full minute. Then I clicked, and it was done. Emma called 2 hours later, and I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again, and again. By the end of the day, she had left 7 messages, each one more indignant than the last. The final message was the one that confirmed I had made the right decision. "Dad, I cannot believe you're doing this to me," her voice said through the phone speaker. "Do you know how embarrassing this is going to be if I can't make my rent? What are my friends going to think? I thought you loved me more than this. Call me back immediately." Not once in any of those messages did she ask how I was doing. Not once did she acknowledge that maybe, possibly, she had been taking advantage of my generosity. It was all about her embarrassment, her problems, her needs. I didn't call her back. 3 weeks later, Emma called again. This time she was crying. "Dad, please," she sobbed into the phone. "I've had to get a roommate, and she's terrible. She leaves dishes in the sink and plays music too loud, and I can't live like this. Please, I just need help for a few more months while I figure things out." I almost caved. The sound of Emma crying had always been my kryptonite ever since she was a baby. But I forced myself to remember the check sliding across the table, the casual way she had assumed I would pay for everything, the complete lack of gratitude or recognition that I had been sacrificing for her benefit. "Emma," I said, "you're 30 years old. You make good money. You're smart and capable. You can figure this out." "But Dad, I love you," I said, and hung up. Sarah found me sitting on our back porch that evening, staring at the garden we had never quite gotten around to planting. "You okay?" she asked, settling into the chair beside me. "I keep waiting to feel guilty," I said, "but I don't. Is that terrible?" "No," she said. "It's not terrible. It's healthy." We sat in comfortable silence as the sun set behind our neighbor's fence. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe fully. I thought about the $800 sitting in my checking account, about the possibility of taking Sarah on a vacation we couldn't quite afford before, about maybe finally planting that garden. "What do you think will happen with Emma?" Sarah asked. "I think she'll figure it out," I said. "She's my daughter after all. Underneath all that entitlement, she's got my stubborn streak and your common sense. She'll be fine. And if she doesn't," I considered this, "then I'll know I raised someone who can't survive without constant support, and that will be on me. But I don't think that's who she is. Not really. I think she's just been allowed to be lazy about taking care of herself." Emma didn't call for 2 months after that. I won't lie, and it was hard. I missed her voice, missed the connection we had once had. But I also felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. My weekends were my own. My money was my own. My emotional energy was my own. Sarah and I started taking dance lessons. We bought new furniture for the living room. We planned a trip to Ireland for our 30th wedding anniversary. Small things, but they felt revolutionary after years of budgeting around Emma's needs. Then on a Thursday evening in September, Emma called. "Dad?" Her voice was different, quieter, less demanding. "Hi, sweetheart. I wanted to tell you, I figured it out. The roommate situation. I found someone compatible, and we're splitting expenses, and it's actually working okay." "That's great, Emma. I'm proud of you. And I wanted to apologize for lunch that day and for everything, I guess. I didn't realize how much you had been helping me, and I didn't realize how entitled I had become." I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot I hadn't even realized was there. "It wasn't entirely your fault," I said. "I should have set better boundaries from the beginning." "Maybe," she said, "but I'm an adult, and I should have been more aware of what I was asking of you, and more grateful." We talked for an hour after that, really talked, in a way we hadn't in years. Emma told me about her job, about the roommate who had become a friend, about the things she was learning about herself now that she was truly independent. I told her about the dance lessons, about the trip to Ireland, about how proud I was of the way she was handling everything. "Dad?" she said as we were getting ready to hang up. "Yeah? Next time we have lunch, it's on me. Really?" I smiled. "I'd like that." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a while, thinking about the journey Emma and I had taken to get to this point. It had been messy and painful and necessary, like most important growth tends to be. Sarah appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, having heard only my side of the conversation. "How did it go?" she asked. "Good, I said. "Really good." She came over and kissed the top of my head, the way she used to do when Emma was little and I would fall asleep in the rocking chair after putting her to bed. "I'm proud of you," she said. "I know that wasn't easy." "No," I agreed, "but it was necessary." I think about that lunch at the Gilded Rose sometimes, about the moment when the check slid across the table and my world shifted on its axis. It was such a small gesture, really, $237.43, but it represented something much larger, a pattern of giving and taking that had become so unbalanced it threatened to destroy not just our relationship, but both of our characters. Emma and I have had lunch together 3 times since that phone call in September. Each time she has insisted on paying, and each time I've let her. Not because I need her to prove anything to me, but because I can see how important it is for her to demonstrate that she understands what reciprocity means. The last time we met, she took me to a little Italian place near her office. Nothing fancy, just good food and reasonable prices. We split a bottle of house wine and talked about books, about politics, about whether she should adopt the cat that had been hanging around her fire escape. "You know what's funny?" she said as she signed the credit card receipt. "I actually enjoy treating you to dinner. It feels good to be able to take care of you for once, even in this small way." "It feels good to let you," I admitted. And it did. For 28 years, I had been the giver in our relationship, and Emma had been the receiver. We had both gotten so comfortable in those roles that we forgot there was any other way to be. But watching Emma calculate the tip and wave away my offer to contribute, I saw glimpses of the generous, thoughtful person she was learning to become. She's dating someone now, a guy named Marcus who works in nonprofit development. The first time she told me about him, she said, "I think you'd like him, Dad. He's the kind of person who always pays his share." It was such a simple statement, but it told me everything I needed to know about how much Emma had changed. The old Emma might have dated someone who expected her to pay for everything, or someone who always picked up the tab as a power play. But this Emma had learned to value fairness and mutual respect. Sarah and I went to Ireland in October, and it was everything we had dreamed it would be. We walked through ancient castles and along dramatic coastlines, and we talked about our life together in ways we hadn't in years. One evening, sitting in a pub in Galway, listening to traditional music and drinking the best Guinness of my life, Sarah raised her glass. "To Emma," she said. "To Emma," I agreed, "for teaching us that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no." We clinked glasses, and I felt a contentment I had been searching for without knowing it. My daughter was becoming the kind of person I had always hoped she would be, not because I had given her everything she wanted, but because I had finally stopped. The irony isn't lost on me. I spent 30 years trying to show Emma how much I loved her by saying yes to everything, by sacrificing endlessly, by putting her needs before everyone else's, including my own. But the thing that finally made her understand my love, and more importantly, made her capable of loving me back in a meaningful way, was learning to say no. I think about the father I used to be, the one who couldn't bear to see his daughter struggle with anything, who smoothed every path and removed every obstacle. That father thought he was being loving, but really he was being afraid. Afraid that if Emma faced any hardship, she would think less of him. Afraid that if he didn't provide everything she wanted, she wouldn't need him anymore. The father I am now understands that real love isn't about preventing someone from experiencing difficulty. It's about believing they're strong enough to handle it. It's about respecting them enough to let them fail and succeed and learn and grow into the person they're meant to be. Emma called me last week to tell me she's been promoted again, this time to department head. She's the youngest person to hold that position in her company's history, and she got there entirely on her own merit, without my financial safety net to fall back on. "I couldn't have done this if you hadn't forced me to become independent," she told me. "I would have stayed comfortable and complacent. I never would have pushed myself this hard." "You had it in you all along," I said. "I was just getting in your way." We laughed about it, but there was truth in that statement. Sometimes the most generous thing you can give someone is the chance to discover their own strength. Next month is Emma's 31st birthday, and she's throwing herself a party. She invited Sarah and me, along with Marcus and her friends and colleagues. "I'm making my famous lasagna," she said, "and Marcus is handling the wine selection. It's going to be perfect." The old Emma never cooked for anyone. She never hosted parties or thought about what other people might enjoy. But this Emma, the one who learned to pay her own bills and consider other people's feelings, is excited about the opportunity to give rather than receive. I'm looking forward to the party, but more than that, I'm looking forward to watching Emma in her element, surrounded by people who know her as she is now rather than as she used to be. I'm proud of the woman she's becoming, but I'm also proud of the father I've learned to be. The other day, I was cleaning out my desk and found the receipt from that lunch at the Gilded Rose. $237.43. Faded now, but still legible. For a moment, I considered throwing it away, but then I tucked it back into the drawer. Not because I want to hold on to the hurt or the disappointment, but because I want to remember the moment when everything changed. That receipt represents the most expensive lesson I ever learned, but also the most valuable. It taught me that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's codependency. It taught me that giving someone everything they want is very different from giving them what they need. And it taught me that sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is trust their child enough to let them struggle. I don't regret the years I spent supporting Emma, financially and emotionally. Those years were part of her story and mine, and they led us to where we are now. But I'm grateful for that moment in the restaurant when I finally understood that I had been loving her in a way that diminished us both. These days, when Emma calls, she asks about my life as much as she talks about her own. When we make plans, she considers what I might enjoy, not just what she wants to do. When she tells me about her successes, there's gratitude in her voice, not just for my past support, but for my current faith in her ability to handle her own life. The relationship we have now is harder than the one we had before. It requires more thought, more consideration, more genuine care, but it's also richer and more real. Emma isn't my project anymore. She's my daughter, fully grown and beautifully flawed and completely capable of taking care of herself. And that, I've learned, is the greatest gift a parent can give. Not security or comfort or endless support, but the unshakable belief that their child is strong enough to build their own life, make their own mistakes, and find their own way home. The check may have been expensive, but the education was priceless.